Hey, how's it going? It's Aleks here. Today I just want to share with you a bit of insight I had a few days ago. It's a bit random, but it's just one of those things where, I just felt like I had to kind of just get it off my chest and express it. It was quite an interesting insight, to me at least. So a few days ago I was just on the train to work, and it must have been probably about 8 a.m, and it's still slightly dark, but not really. It's kind of, the sun's kind of just coming up now. And I'm just on my way to Waterloo Station, so, I'm travelling through London on the overground. And I'm not sure exactly what stop I'm on, but, I'm kind of on my way to Waterloo, maybe like 4 or 5 stops away. And in the distance, obviously you see the kind of the cityscape, the buildings are getting taller. And, the environment's looking kind of more just like urban and commercialised, and, while that's happening, I'm in my little cabin, I'm kind of warm, I'm just reading my book, Plato, The Republic, just trying to elevate my mind. And then I put the book down, and I'm looking out the window, and, the kind of the buildings in the foreground, I suppose you could say, are kind of, rushing past, but in the distance, I look into the sky, and the sky looks like just some crazy, wild kind of tundra, like just powerful and deep but expansive, and kind of the clouds are they look kind of big and violent, but they're not like moving very fast as such, but there was this very powerful feel to the sky in the distance. It was this kind of like dark bluey, maybe like light purple kind of touch to it, and obviously the sun was coming up, so it wasn't going to be that dark for too long. But anyway, it looked powerful. And I looked at it and I thought, man, this just made me feel just very minuscule in contrast. And it kind of, just brought home the fact that we are on a little world in this kind of like infinitely huge universe, kind of puts things into perspective, at least that kind of insight at that moment for me. So I kind of looked at, the buildings flying past. I was looking at the tracks that I was going down, the kind of the brick walls and whatnot, which were flying past. And it kind of gave me a bit of insight into kind of creation, in the sense that I was looking at the graffiti on the walls, and, some of it's pretty lame, and some of it's like really good. But with the graffiti, for example, you had an individual who took a spray can, and they sprayed their art or tags, whatever. But for them to do that, the spray can in itself, who created the spray can, Now, bear with me here. So I was thinking about how for every kind of component of the spray can, from the cap to the, to the artwork, to the actual design of the can, for the resources which were kind of mined, the aluminium to create the can, the engineering kind of knowledge to make the actual pressurized can, and then obviously you had to make the cast, and then there was just so many different parts which came together to kind of, put this can together. Do you know what I mean? And there's so many kind of like, very well-learned and even great minds who kind of like preceded the creation of this can, or just the invention of the can in itself. So I just found it fascinating that all these different kind of processes came together to create a can that someone could take to spray the wall. It kind of made me just think how, even for each little process, there had to be a great level of focus and dedication and knowledge. Again, when it is to know how to, make the pressurized can, how to make the cap, how to make the molds, how to mine the aluminium, how to make the paints. There's all this kind of like specialized knowledge behind every single part of doing that. And it made me realize that really as man, floating in this like huge universe on this little world, each one of us really does have the kind of the ability to create a kind of a reality which is aligned with our inner worlds. Do you know what I mean? And I think one of the variables which can never really be gotten rid of is that of focus and time. Focus is just so important, and then just from obviously observing the creation behind the can, then you look at all the buildings, and again the ingenuity which kind of went behind the creation of these buildings, the steel girders and the brickwork, the architecture, just everything behind it. The actual creation of this city that I was flying through at speed was just, it's immense. You know, really, we are kind of standing on the shoulders of giants. And I just thought, in that moment of time, even when I was just there looking at, say, the buttons inside the train, you know, the little steel buttons, which are kind of circled with a bit of glass, and then you've got like a, you know, green light around them, and they make a noise when you know, when they're pressed or whatever. And just every single, there's just so much kind of ingenuity and so much focus and so much knowledge behind every single little thing you see kind of around you, or at least most things which are human made and which you see around you kind of in everyday life. And I just think, yeah, we do take things for granted, you know. Things, obviously, it's very easy to look at life and, you know, get used to things and get a kind of, I don't know, you start to get a bit bored and think everything's very samey. But when you really lock in and just look at things and think, wow, look at the ingenuity behind that, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. But what's my point here? I think my point really is, at the end of the day, anything can kind of be accomplished, but it's all down to focus, isn't it, really? Again, with all these intricate parts and planning which goes behind all the creations we see around us, there was quite a high degree of focus. But obviously, to have that focus, obviously you do need to have some sort of kind of financial backing and resources. So there is that variable as well. You know, obviously I understand that. But I have seen, you know, many times in my life when someone is kind of focused on something, especially in the creative field, you know, whether it's kind of a project or, you know, like I know people who become famous, like literally. I'm sure I'll talk about them in later videos, but I know people who, you know, one guy, he went on to become like a star in Hollywood. Yeah, you probably know who he is. And then I know another guy who's like really famous in the UK, and he does stuff abroad. These people, they focused on their craft or what it is, their vision, and with that kind of power of focus, it's almost like a magnet, you know, to others who might want to kind of, you know, sponsor them with their energy or with their finances and whatnot. So it's like, you know, focus is the commodity, I believe. That's the commodity that, you know, is very precious. And I think that's the point I'm trying to get to with this video. Is that focus is just so important, man. It's so important. You know, I fight every day to try and maintain my focus on the things which are important, you know, to me at least. And even when I had this kind of insight, you know, I think that was after maybe a day or two of not really looking at social media and not really kind of bogging down my brain with all the, you know, the quote unquote low vibrational stuff out there, you know, all the kind of the drama and whatnot and the gossip and these kind of like low human activities. You know, when you try and cut yourself off from that and you try and, you know, come back to yourself, it's quite amazing the kind of the perspective you can have on things. And yeah, so I don't know, I think obviously focus is just a very, very powerful thing, especially when it comes to creating things in your life and kind of creating a reality that you want. But I suppose, you know, and I'm not going to go off on one here, you know, I'm gonna try and keep it chill, but, you know, I do feel like these phones are a huge distraction. A lot of this technology is a huge distraction, and you know, was it put there by design? I mean, who knows? But like I say, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna go too deep on this one. So yeah, what's my takeaway? I mean, just from that insight I had, I just think, yeah, as human beings, we have a lot of power within us to create the kind of lives we want. And, you know, don't get me wrong. Obviously, you know, some might have access to bigger resources and, you know, bigger money and whatnot, and you know, kind of bigger connections to kind of, you know, create potentially more amazing things, quote unquote. But at the same time, you know, I'm talking about within each of our respective parameters. I think we have the ability to create great things. Like I think again, like, you know, if you didn't have much resources, but you kind of really did hone in on trying to create something incredible within your parameters, that in itself has the kind of the power to attract others who can kind of take you to that next level, if that makes sense. But again, this is a little bit more theory, but I have also seen it with my own eyes. I've seen people who kind of started at the ground and they've gone on to do big things purely because their concept or idea really had legs to go somewhere, you know, and it came from somewhere kind of genuine and a place of focused energy. So yeah, anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that, and I hope that wasn't too much of a rant. I hope that kind of resonated with you a bit. But yeah, let me know what you think, because I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. I want to keep this channel kind of, I want this to be a channel which kind of inspires people, because I think there's a lot of channels which it's all too simple to kind of lean into the doominess and kind of this kind of brutal realism. But while that can be cathartic to listen to, I don't think it's good in the long term. I think people need to keep their heads up, and I think it's interesting to think about things which are transcendental and inspiring and which can lift your spirit, But yeah, let me know what you think, and I look forward to hearing from you. All right, so that's enough from me. Cheerio. Cheerio.